Good afternoon, Kent Hovind here.
Good evening, folks. Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland.
Hello, folks. Kent Hovind here.
Good evening, folks. Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in lovely Lenox, Alabama. Good evening, folks. Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. We're the folks who believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. God made everything in 6 days, like he said. Because you are brainwashed into believing your dumb religion of evolution. You know it's a lie. If you found your math book in your kid's school it said 2 + 2 is 5, what would you do? You just be faithful. Do your job.
Today's video is brought to you by Fume. You know those little habits you don't even think about? The ones you reach for automatically? Well, personally, I got plenty of them, which is why I've started using Fume, the sponsor of today's video. Fume isn't a vape, there's no nicotine, no smoke, no batteries, just a natural flavoured air device built from real wood with a magnetic fidget feature that keeps your hands busy. There are so many flavours to choose from. Now my go-to is always crisp mint. It's a sharp, refreshing, and it hits just right for me. There's also orange vanilla, which is smooth. Maple pepper's even got a bit of a kick to it if that's your thing. There's a variety of flavours for everyone, and over 500,000 people have already added Fume to their daily routine. It's a smarter, cleaner swap for those habits that you desperately want to remove from your life. So if you're ready to try it, head over to tryfume.com/Creaky or scan the QR code on the screen. And don't forget to use code Creaky to get a free Fume topper with your journey pack. Right, let's get back to the video. A lot of people think Kent Hovind or Dr. Dino is just a harmless old guy. Yeah, you know the type, a bit eccentric, maybe a little weird about dinosaurs and the Bible. Perhaps he's just a passionate man of faith, trying to tell people what he believes is the truth.
If I asked you to explain how computers came to be, but you cannot use man as your answer, I only want a purely naturalistic explanation for the origin of computers. Purely naturalistic. The answer has to lie within the computer. How did these molecules get together? How did this data get together? How did these plastic molecules come together and the different silicone chips? How did it happen? Your answer has to lie in the computer. I've already eliminated the only obvious answer to the problem at the beginning by my definition. They're trying to eliminate the only logical answer to the question by their definition of science. They want to define science as things that we can observe and test and demonstrate in the natural world. Okay, well then that eliminates both evolution and creation. Both are unobserved. We don't see anything change. We don't see anything created from nothing. Here's the problem. Both creation and evolution are religious. I admit mine's a religion. They don't admit theirs is a religion. And all of us are paying for their religion to be taught in the school system. And I, for one, resent that. So my answer is still the same. God did it.
Maybe he's been ostracized by communities, even his own family. But hey, he's just loud and proud, right? But what if I told you that beneath the surface of his wild claims about vegetarian T-Rexes and fire-breathing dragons lies a man with zero credentials, a criminal record, and a history of bullying and abuse. A man whose entire persona is a carefully manufactured lie built on intellectual dishonesty and sheer social stupidity. This isn't just bad science, this is the epic story of a coward who built his entire life pretending to be something he's not. Kent Hovind's entire persona is built on one fraudulent word: doctor.
But I do have a PhD. And they say, is your PhD legitimate? Well, I think you've got a right to face your accusers. I say, whoever's spreading the information about a PhD, would you please stand? And they don't stand, of course. I'm always ready to answer questions. But whenever somebody says, you don't have a legitimate degree, right away I know it's called an ad hominem attack. They're attacking the person instead of the message. So I do take it a little cautiously. Do you have a legitimate degree? Well, they're trying to draw attention away from their silly religion of evolution. PhD means Doctorate of Philosophy. That's what it means. Do I have one? Yes, I do. There's a picture of it. It's hanging on the wall right inside if you want to go look at it. Patriot University started 1980 in Colorado Springs. It was a Baptist church that started this university. It's a Christian school.
This wasn't a PhD with peer-reviewed work or rigorous research. This was a diploma mill degree from Patriot University, an uncredited outfit operating out of a Colorado trailer park. His so-called dissertation was so deficient that a biochemistry professor, Karen Bartlett, who once debated Kent, described it as incomplete, riddled with spelling errors, and lacking reference or even original research.
Why do we say these bad things? Because Hovind's website and seminar notebook are monuments to scientific illiteracy. They contain incorrect information, outdated information, and misrepresentations of scientific principles, all of them straw men.
His only real academic background, a bachelor's degree from Midwestern Baptist College, also unaccredited. Midwestern wasn't about academics, it was about indoctrination. It was run by Pastor Tom Malone, a major figure in the independent fundamentalist Baptist movement. The school was a small, insignificant but loud sect of Christianity that fiercely opposed modernism and liberalism. Malone's purpose was more about character building than education, and he taught that a secular education was dangerous, and evolution is not just a theory, it's a wicked attack against the Bible. Ooh.
The Lord knows who you are. He sees you where you are right now. And your people's all around you. But He knows what's going on inside you right now. I'm so glad He does. He sees me. He knows me. He knows what's going on in my life. And more than I could ever understand, He loves and cares for me personally. Not in a group. Individually, He cares for me.
The environment at the college was highly conservative and, according to a former student, had misogynistic mentalities. And that's exactly what Hovind became. He admits himself, nothing's original with me. His anti-evolution arguments were lifted wholesale from Henry Morris, a civil engineer with no degree in biology, geology, or paleontology.
Animals, you've got to have buried animals and plants. They've got to be buried by sediments, and furthermore, buried quickly.
See, fossils don't form unless they're buried quickly.
So you date the fossil by the rocks and the rocks by the fossils. Both are based on evolution. And you begin to see, I hope, that we're involved in a vast circle of reasoning here.
If the layers are dated by the fossils and the fossils are dated by the layers, that is absolute stupidity.
It would take a long time to form that canyon by the river gradually eroding it down at the bottom. And as a matter of fact, it would take a long time for all the sediments with their layers there to be deposited too. You'd think, but no, as a matter of fact, all of those sedimentary layers, fine stratified sediments, were formed in essentially one day, and the canyon was eroded in essentially one day.
One of the biggest lies they teach the kids in school is that it took millions of years to make Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon formed in less than a week.
And other versions might say sea monsters or something else, but the word in the Hebrew is tanin, which is in other parts of the Old Testament translated dragons. God created the great dragons of the world. What's that? That's the dinosaurs. That's what they used to be called.
You say, Brother Hovind, is this a fire-breathing dragon? Yep, sure is. The Bible talks about fire-breathing dragons.
They died out fairly recently, and maybe they haven't died out completely. We still get reports every once in a while.
His fiery preaching style was a direct copy of Tom Malone. Hovind is not a scholar. He's a parrot with a microphone who can only regurgitate the works of others. One critic noted that Hovind doesn't seem to know what the words he uses actually mean, because his arguments are laughable. For example, he presents an absurd idea of punctuated equilibrium by showing a slide of a bird hatching from an alligator's egg as a way to ridicule evolution. And what's worse, he makes genuine academic discussion impossible. Try bringing real evidence and he'll just repeat his script, louder and with more mockery.
I happen to like science quite a bit, but see, the creation view doesn't have to be constantly corrected because it's right, okay? I like the answer that the one gentleman gave. He said, obviously, the computer is here because of man, because of intelligence. I mean, obviously, this took a designer. Well, duh. So did the universe. So did the single cell in your body. So did every living creature. I mean, you can't explain the computer inside the computer, can you? And you can't explain the creation inside the creation. There has to be something above an intelligent designer.
It's a rhetorical trick. overwhelm with confidence, substitute volume for substance, and pretend authority comes from bravado and not facts. Hovind's arrogance didn't stop at fake science. He believed he was above the law itself. In 1996, he filed for bankruptcy, claiming he was not a US citizen, had no income, no expenses, and no property, because everything belonged to God.
You mentioned a couple times about prison and things like that. Are you able to kind of speak to that at all? And
Oh, yeah,
what
any question?
happened?
I got nothing to hide.
What happened?
Well, they want badly to discredit me in some other area. It wouldn't matter who I was. I could be
Right.
Al Capone.
Right.
If I'm teaching the truth on creation, that wouldn't matter, okay? What happened, we had a lot of college students working at our ministry, and they'd come whenever they could for a couple hours between their college schedule. So we kept cash on hand. We paid them cash, and they paid their own taxes, okay? One of the trustees of the ministry said, Kent, Congress passed a law. If you take out over $10,000 from your bank, the bank has to fill out a form called a cash transaction report. They can fill out all the forms they want. I don't care.
The court called his arguments patently absurd, and they were. Enter Glenn Stoll, a scam artist who sold churches bogus ministerial trusts to hide assets and dodge taxes. He promised people they could stop paying income and employment taxes, call employees independent contractors, and funnel everything through these trusts. Stoll eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy to defraud the United States, and Hovind, well, he was his star pupil. The scheme worked for a while though, until 2006. That's when the IRS hit Hovind with 58 felony charges. Let that sink in. 58 felony charges. 12 counts of willfully failing to pay employee taxes, 45 counts of structuring, also known as smurfing, breaking cash transactions into small amounts under $10,000 to avoid bank reporting laws, and obstruction of the IRS. Now, in total, over $1 million was deposited into various accounts that he and his wife Jo had not paid taxes on. Hovind's legal strategy mirrored Glenn Stoll's arguing that his workers were missionaries rather than employees, and that the ministry revenue belonged to God. Now, a jury took just 3 hours to convict him and his wife Jo on all of those counts. But in Hovind's retelling, he was a martyr.
So when they came in and arrested me for structuring, 45 times they said, you took out less than $10,000. Yeah, we never did over 10,000. And if they did over 10, they'd fill out their form. It's a form the bank has to do. So my attorney said, Kent, don't even give a defense. There's no crime here. You didn't do anything wrong.
He claimed that a SWAT team raided his house, but court testimony from an IRS agent states that no such team was ever involved, and Hovind was given freedom to roam as the search was conducted. He claimed the prosecutor who jailed him was John David Roy Aitchison, who later killed himself in jail after a paedophile scandal. Now, in reality, it was his son Eric, not the judge, who used those words in court. Hovind's lies were so blatant, you wonder if he even remembers what reality looks like. And so Kent, Dr. Dino Hovind, went to federal prison for 9 years. After 8 years of freedom from his control, Jo had had enough. In 2016, she finally divorced him. Hovind just brushed it off. If they depart, you move on. And move on he did, straight into the arms of Mary Tocco just months later. And when that ended, he repeated the cycle with Cindy Lincoln, subjecting her to an environment so hostile it bordered on psychological warfare. He wanted her to break so he could play the victim when she left. And his parenting style, equally disturbing. He bragged about physically abusing his son for being afraid of the dentist, saying smoke was rising off his backside, and that he wanted his boy more scared of me than anything in the world. That's not discipline, that's abuse.
When one of my sons was 7 years old, we went to the dentist, and the dentist said, Mr. Hovind, this kid has a cavity. I said, yes, sir, I knew about it. Are you talking about the big one up here, or just one in his tooth? He said, well, just the one in his tooth. The only one we can fix. I said, okay, doc, let's fix it. So the dentist said, now listen, son, you're going to have to sit still. Hold real still, open your mouth real wide, and I'm going to give you a shot. You're going to give me a shot? Yeah, calm down, calm down. I'm going to give you a shot. You're going to drill the bad stuff out and fill it with silver, and you'll be out of here in no time. No problem. So the doctor called the nurse, and she came in and sat on him, and I sat on him, and the doctor sat on him, and we tried to hold him still, but man, you got to hold real still for that stuff. And finally the dentist was getting all nervous. He said, man, I can't do this. He's got to hold still. I said, Doc, let me take him outside and talk to him for a few minutes. Maybe I can calm him down. We went out to the van, sat in the back seat of the old Chevy van. I said, son, I love you very much. He said, I know, Daddy. I said, son, I told you to sit still. You did not sit still. What happens when you disobey, Daddy? He said, you get a spanking. I said, that's correct. Bend over. And boy, did I give him a spanking. It was a doozy. A few minutes later, the smoke is rising off his hind end, and the tears are coming down his cheeks, and the pearls are coming out of his nostrils. I mean, the whole thing. I said, now listen, son, we're going to go back in the dentist office, and you're going to sit in that chair. And if you wiggle one time, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just calmly going to take you back out to the van and give you 2 spankings like you just got. And then we're going to go back in the dentist office, and if you wiggle, I'm going to bring you back out and give you 3 spankings in a row like you just got. And we're going to go back and forth all day until I get tired.
And his history of violence extends beyond his family. He was arrested for assault and battery against the secretary in 2002, although the charges were later dropped. Now, his second wife, Mary Tocco, also claims she witnessed him violently body slam a 13-year-old boy. And his associations were even worse. He defends convicted sex offenders, even allowing them onto his property, which is marked as a family-friendly park. And against legal advice, against common sense, because protecting his ego mattered more than protecting children, he defends people like Chris Jones, a registered sex offender, and allows him onto the park, even stating in a conversation that it's illegal for him to be there, but he's my friend.
So it's been interesting to see the comments. I posted a Facebook comment yesterday, I think it was, about someone had a YouTube up about me, about a friend of mine named Chris Jones. I'm not going to do, he did take it down, so I'm not going to do a long program on that. However, Chris Jones has been a friend of mine for many, many years. I've known he was railroaded completely by the system because he knew things about what happened at the jail. They threw him in jail for absolutely no reason. The guards beat him unconscious. When he got released later to await trial for this false charge they brought him up on, the guards beat another prisoner and beat him to death. And so the guards at the prison were claiming, and the U.S. Attorney, District Attorney, whatever it was, was claiming, well, this is a one-time incident. And Chris was going to testify, no, it's not. This is routinely what they do. And so they had to shut him up somehow. So they made up these wild charges from an incident from 5 years earlier, I believe it was. Anyway, it was insane. So it's all over. Forget it. Drop it. The story is not, the people who are reporting the story do not know the facts, and the people who think that I am somehow wrong for defending a child molester do not know the fact. He is not a child molester, never has been. He's a great Christian friend of mine.
Hovind's crowning project has always been DAL, or Dinosaur Adventureland. The original in Florida collapsed under ongoing zoning battles and, of course, unpaid taxes. This is Kent Hovind, after all. His new one in Alabama was built on free labour from volunteers, and it operates as a 501c3 non-profit, a complete contradiction of the anti-government ideology that landed him in prison. And it's here where his narcissism is laid bare. Former volunteers describe being overworked, belittled and exploited. A young woman named Sierra Hammond, who was 18 at the time, detailed her experience of being solely responsible for cooking and cleaning for up to 50 people at a time. She was screamed at by Hovind's right-hand man, Steve Lynn, at 4:30 a.m. for not doing the dishes. Hovind was extremely stubborn about enforcing a strict hierarchy where women were expected to do women's work, like laundry and dishes, while men were forbidden from helping. Another volunteer, Hannah Deborah, spoke about being used by Hovind as an unwelcome advertising tool on YouTube to attract viewers, which she found inappropriate and shocking behaviour. And when tragedy struck, his reaction was absolutely grotesque. Now in 2020, a 7-year-old boy tragically drowned at DAL's lakes. Now legal experts suggested the venue could be liable for not having a trained lifeguard on duty. Hovind's statement? Kids do dumb things once in a while. He immediately pivoted to bragging that the child's father loved the ministry and wanted to come back. A child had died, and Kent's first instinct was to protect his image.
The little boy drowning in the lake.
Okay. Stephen and his family, he had a twin brother, 2 twins, both 7 years old. Their dad and mother were here, 5 kids. They were swimming in the lake. Stephen and his brother were a little bit, not autistic, but, headed that way, okay? I don't know how they graduate those things. Dad is right there with them. I'm up here at the property, half a mile away, up here working on sermons. And I got a message, oh, a boy just drowned. So we raced down there. I'm a lifeguard and water safety instructor. Apparently the kid had come up under the dock. He was hyperactive, and he came up under the dock in 3 feet of water, hit his head on the dock, knocked himself out, is the best we can figure out. And drowned. No question, he drowned. So the dad, very supportive of the ministry, loves our ministry. He said, Brother Hovind, thank you for all you've done for the Lord at this place. I want to donate a gazebo to put on the end of your dock in honor of my son. He's not mad about it. Drownings happen all the time. It's sad, it's awful, but it happens, Dad was right there with him. So what did I do wrong in that case? We have 16 lakes here. You can come swim in all of them. I'm not going to watch you swim in the lake. If you can't swim, don't get in the water.
It's textbook narcissism. Dr. Les Carter, a psychotherapist who works with victims of malignant narcissists, describes them as control-obsessed, empathy deficient, pathologically defensive, paranoid, and entitled. The truth is, his relevance is gone. His empire is crumbling. His only trick left is picking fights online, begging for debates, because attention is oxygen, and obscurity terrifies Ken. But when offered a fair, neutral interview, he'll dodge it, over and over again. Why? Because at the core, Kent is not a warrior. He's a coward, afraid to grow, afraid to take responsibility, and afraid to face the truth. So what's the verdict? We don't debate him. We don't hand him a platform. We don't give him the attention he craves. Because you're never really debating Kent Hovind, you're debating the recycled words of Henry Morris and Tom Malone, neither of whom had any expertise in biology or paleontology. Hovind is just a mouthpiece, a parrot in a cheap Hawaiian shirt. Huge thank you to Foom for sponsoring another video, and I'll see you all again next time. Love you, bye.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna